Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Tom Newton, and I'm with Simba Technologies. Depending on where you're joining us from today, wanted to welcome you to one in a regular series of webinars that Simba holds, and just thank you very, very much for joining us today. We will be speaking about how to build a driver in 5 days. This is a webinar that will use and leverage the SimbaEngine 9.1 software development kit that we have, and hopefully this is why you signed up and joined us today. And if so, yeah, thank you once again for making time out of your busy day. And we hope that the next 45 minutes will be a real benefit to you as we will go through the SimbaEngine SDK for the next 45 minutes and just kind of discuss and allow you to really speed up and enable you to download the SDK if you haven't done so already, and dig in and build yourself a high performance data connectivity piece of software in quite short order. At this point, I'm going to bring in Kyle Porter. Kyle is one of our engineers here at Simba. Kyle, are you on the line today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking time out of your day and coming and helping us out with, I guess, some of the technical aspects. Kyle, what I thought we'd do for the next 45 minutes is I'll give a bit of an overview of the kit of the SimbaEngine SDK, and then a little bit about the company, of course, and then hand it over to you and let you kind of really dig in, and you being the engineer here, kind of show the folks what it's like to really deal with the kit, build a driver in short order, and allow them to then come back in and download the kit and get on with it. So I think that's about it for now. I think my piece here will take about, the intro will probably take about 10 minutes. So if you can stand by in the wings, I'll come back to you in a little bit, and we'll kind of get on with things. How does that sound?
Sure, that sounds great.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks again, and I'll be back to you shortly. So a friend of mine, I was talking to them the other day, and they said, or I was actually asking them to kind of explain social media to me, because I kind of didn't really kind of get the whole thing. And the person kind of knew that I was a big fan of donuts, so they sent me over this little clip here, and they had written it up on their board and took a shot of it and sent it over. So I wanted to share this with all of you because I think it's kind of pertinent to today, and everything's revolving around social media. So within the context of my my deep affection for donuts, what my friend said is, Tom, what you need to do is you need to go get on Twitter, and you need to hashtag donut. And once you've done that, you need to go over to Facebook and you need to like donuts. And then you need to get onto Foursquare and really say, this is where I eat donuts. He said, if you don't have Instagram, go get it and put up a vintage photo of my favorite donut. Get onto YouTube and show yourself, say, here I am eating a donut. LinkedIn, of course, everyone uses LinkedIn, and I should put up my skills include donut eating. Pinterest, here's a donut recipe. On Last.fm, I can tell people that I'm listening to donuts. And then, of course, on Google+, I'm a Google employee who eats donuts. Anyway, that was an attempt at a bit of a joke there. So anyway, let's get on with why you're here and how we might be able to help you with the SimbaEngine SDK and building some high-performance connectivity software. So who is Simba? We talk about ourselves here as the biggest company that no one's ever heard of. We really are kind of the plumbers and the suppliers of connectivity software to some of the biggest software companies in the globe. And because we do that, a lot of people have just never heard of us. Simba Technologies, we are an access and analytics solution provider, so that's all we do. We just build connectivity software. We co-wrote the original ODBC spec with Microsoft over 20 years ago. So this is nothing new to us. We've been at this for a very, very long time. That DLL, the original ODBC connectivity piece, has been distributed, we figure, to probably over 30 million desktops through Microsoft and everybody else. So the SimbaEngine SDK that you'll be looking at today that you're interested in has come out of that and has evolved from that original work that we did with Microsoft way back. And it's interesting that our relationship with Microsoft has really come full circle, because in June we were really proud to announce a licensing agreement with Microsoft that we will be supplying them with an ODBC driver for their big data initiative, which is called HD Insights. It'll be running on their Azure platform. So things really, over 20 years ago, came all the way back around, and we're really proud of that. So within Simba, if you're on our website and you're looking around, you'll kind of see or kind of sense that there's kind of two sides, two product sides to the Simba family. One I would call relational data connectivity, and the other is multidimensional data connectivity. So relational is kind of why we're here today. That's your ODBC, JDBC, ADO connectivity. But there is another piece just to keep in mind of Simba, and that is the multidimensional piece. So that's what ODBC is to relational MDX. The MDX query language is to multidimensional. So just to keep that in mind, if you're ever looking around for other things, and if you're looking at the website, that's really kind of how we differentiate things here. So what we'll be doing with the SimbaEngine SDK is we will be showing you how to connect your favorite BI tools through standards-based connectivity into your data source. And that's really why people come to us, and that's really why people are licensing the SimbaEngine SDK. So the kit is a data driver development kit, and for any kind of data source. So whether or not you have a fully SQL-capable data store, a non or no SQL data store, or a proprietary data store with some SQL capabilities, the SimbaEngine SDK will allow you to connect that data source through standards-based connectivity, so that your users, and whether they're your customers' users or your internal users, will be able to connect their favorite BI tools, the Excels of the world, the Tableaus, the ClickText, and the ClickView, and Crystal Reports, and all of those favorite BI tools that people want to use. All right. In front of you now is a graphical depiction of, I guess we call it the SimbaEngine stack. So this is the different levels and the different Lego blocks, if you will, of the pieces that make up the Simba engine. So at the bottom is what we talked about is your data. So whether it's SQL, non-SQL, big data, cloud data, doesn't matter. Your data is stored here. In the first level up, the data store interface, we call the DSI, that is the piece that you're going to work on and that we're going to show you how to build out. That will allow you to connect to your data and then deploy your driver and be able to connect to your tools up top. So this is the focus of what you'll be writing. The Simba SQL engine is a fully SQL 92 compliant engine. It has all of the features that you would need in a SQL engine. So we would use this if you have no SQL in your data. And it supports the scalar functions and joins and subqueries and distinct order by, group by, having, etc. And there's also this this feature in there called CQE, collaborative query execution, and that's kind of Simba's secret sauce for enabling high performance and really scaling this thing up need be. Not everyone uses CQE, but it is it's a performance piece that that allows you to really get something that you need out of the engine. And I'll be going into more of that. Then there's a communication layer, and then there's your interface pieces, whether or not you want to use ODBC. ODBC is used, I don't know, of the business we see probably 80% of the time, and that's because the BI tools are mostly ODBC compliant. But JDBC is popular with people using Java and the like. It is becoming quite popular again as well. ODBC, OLADD, and ADO.NET, not so much. So, but they are available, and they're all part of the kit. And regardless of what you need, this is what the stack looks like. So let me give you just a quick rundown here of the deployment options, because we hear this over and over again from customers that come to us that evaluate the SimbaEngine SDK against others that might be out there, and this is why they choose Simba. It's just because of the flexibility and the ability to meet all of the needs of their particular deployment. So this is the same graphic we just looked at, but let's talk about what pieces of the Lego blocks you would need if you were going to build an ODBC driver, and the data was SQL based, and it is single tier. So this is a very simple deployment option. So the resulting ODBC driver would be installed on the client machine. All you need to do is focus on the data store interface, and we're going to connect your SQL data, use the ODBC interface, and then bang, you'll be able to use any ODBC standard BI tool, ISV apps, or Excel for that matter. All right, so that's a real simple one. Now let's move to a different scenario where the data, say it was no SQL data or big data or cloud data, something that didn't have SQL in it. Then you'd want to invoke the Simba SQL engine. So you're still going to build out your DSI, but you'll simply turn on the Simba SQL engine. We're still going to do an ODBC interface, and the result will be the same in that we'll be able to use these tools, the BI tools that you want. So let's move to a next scenario. So this would be where we were not going to put or install the ODBC driver just on a client machine, but we wanted to deploy in client server mode. So same thing, we're back to building, we're going to build an ODBC driver. We're going to use SQL data. You're going to build out your data store interface, but we will use the Simba communication layer. So you can see how that looks. Let's move on to the next one. So same thing. And you can see here, though, we're going to use non-SQL data. We will use the SimbaEngine SQL engine, and we will deploy ODBC via client server. So now let's flip over to the next scenario, and we'll go back to the beginning. The only thing that's going to change here is that we are going to deploy using the JDBC interface. So your BI tools will change a little bit. ODBC compliant tools will not work in this scenario, but this would be obviously your choice if you had Java BI tools. This would be for a SQL data store. You build out the DSI, deploy as JDBC, and off you go. Here, this would be in client server mode, JDBC with a SQL data store. Here is a non-SQL data store, so now you're going to invoke the Simba SQL engine. We will go client server, and we will deploy as a JDBC driver. And then the same thing with ADO.NET, and we'll go through those, and you can see how the different pieces laid out. All right, so this is all very well laid out in the documentation, and it's very, very easy just to kind of walk through it and we will assist you through that process of just making sure you've got your deployment options figured out. So key features, ODBC 3.52 support, JDBC 3.4 and 4.0 support, ADO.NET support. When you're building out the driver, the kit supports Visual Studio 2008, 2010, 2012 on Windows. There's data definition language and data manipulation language support, extensive SQL 92 query support, high performance scalable SQL engine in there. So if you don't have SQL in your data store, the collaborative query execution, which I mentioned, full Unicode support for the data, metadata, and API parameters, native support for 32 and 64-bit operating systems. So once again, when you think about it, so I want to deploy either 32, so 64-bit on the, say, the server, 32-bit on the client, not a problem. So multiple deployment options. Our customer support, so the way we would support you is at the engineering level. We don't have a customer support desk per se. When you have an issue or question, you are dealing with engineers and people that have actually written the code. In order to speed up the process, we understand your time is extremely valuable. In order to speed up the process, there are 9 sample and template drivers and a development guide inside the SDK that will allow you to very quickly just get your POC up and running, connect to your data, and so you can show the people within your organization and prove yourself that the kit will do what it needs to do. Localized for 13 languages, multiple deployment options we talked about, and wide OS support, which I'll just talk about again right at the end here. So key benefits. Our mantra at Simba is to allow connectivity to any data, anywhere, anytime. This kit that you're about to look at, or maybe you've already sort of spent a bit of time with, is intended and was developed for do-it-yourself work. So it is designed for other software companies, so ISVs, or internal companies to take the kit and develop connectivity software for their needs. That is the specific use of this, and we feel that it is absolutely the best kit out on the marketplace, provides the greatest value, and can allow you to get a high-performance driver written faster and better than anything else that's available. And that's why we talk about being able to build a driver in 5 days, whether it be ODBC, JDBC, or ADO.NET. Extremely cost-effective. We work with small startups. We work with enterprises that just need a ODBC driver for a handful of people within their organization, all the way up to companies like SAP, and I mentioned Microsoft and Teradata, and some of the largest software companies globally. And really, it's you're getting the 20-plus years of experience. So inside the SDK, you're getting an expert in a box, and that's really what we're doing and what we're offering for you here. So lastly, before I hand it over to Kyle, the deployment options in terms of operating systems that are supported, all of Windows. So you can build an ODBC driver and you can install it on any Windows platform. Solaris, HPUX, OS X, and pretty much any of the Linux flavors. So that's about it for me. I just wanted to mention, I forgot off the hop, to urge you to use the chat window that's available in your little GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar application. We will be reviewing this throughout the event today, and we will answer questions at the end. So please use the chat. As you think of your questions, just fire them over to us, and we'll go back through them, and we'll answer them one by one. We should be able to get all the questions in. If we don't, we know who sent them in, and we'll get back to you on a one-to-one basis. Yeah, so I'm just going to hand it over to Kyle. Kyle, are you there?
Hey, guys.
How are you?
Good, good. That was a great intro, Tom.
Glad I didn't put you to sleep, Kyle. I'm just going to hand over the magic wand to you and allow you to take over. I can see your screen now, Kyle. That's great.
Perfect.
And I'll let you dig into the more technical aspects of the kit. And so at the end, we'll when you're done, what we'll do is we'll come back together, and I've got the questions here that'll come in front of me, and we can review them together and just do a bit of a summary.
Perfect. Thanks a lot,
Okay, thank
Tom.
you.
So what you guys are looking at right now is just a basic Windows 7 64-bit install. And I've already gone and I've installed the SimbaEngine SDK on this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through the install and show you what's here, where it is, and what it does. So that when you go and if you've already played around with it, maybe you haven't looked at everything, or if you haven't looked at it yet, when you do look at it, you'll be comfortable and be able to jump right into developing your ODBC, JDBC, or ADO.NET driver. So I've just installed it with the typical installation settings. So you can see it's under C, we have Simba Technologies, the SDK 9.1. If we go and we open that up, you're going to see a bunch of directories. So I'm just going to walk through these and tell you what's there and let you know what's going on. So the first place everyone wants to go is documentation, because you kind of want to see what this does and how it works. So in our documentation section, probably the first place you're going to go is the developer guide, which kind of explains some of what we're talking about in this webinar. It explains the features and how you would use some of them. The other important section is a collection of 5-day guides. So we've realized that, when you get an SDK or download some software, the first thing you want to do is make sure it works. You want to get a POC, proof of concept up. So we created a bunch of 5-day guides, which allow you to take one of the samples that ship with the SDK and modify it in 5 days and actually get a working POC connecting to your data source. So you can have Excel actually talking to your data source, or Tableau talking to your data source within those 5 days. And we've had people get a POC up and running within 2 days, and we've had people take the 5 days. But the guide actually breaks everything up. So on day 1, you'll do this section of work. Day 2, you'll do this section. We also have the client-server users guide. So if you think back to the diagram that Tom was showing you, there's the communication layer, which you could use if you wanted to pull in client-server. So when you build your driver as a server, you would deploy one of the clients that Simba ships. And this guide tells you how to configure the server and the client so that everything works together properly. We also have the release notes for what's new and what's changed in each release. And we have our API reference guide. So if anyone's familiar with JavaDoc and the way that played out, we have a similar thing for our C++ DSI, which is the data store interface. So the next section is the data access components. So these are essentially the pre-built binaries from the Simba SDK, the ones that you aren't going to modify. So if we first look at the bin section, the bin contains 32-bit ODBC client under bin 132 release. We also have the 64-bit ODBC client. And then we also have our .NET DLLs, which are architecture agnostic. So you can use them on either 32-bit or 64-bit. And in this section, we also have our .NET client. And these are what you'd link against if you were going to be building either an ADO.NET provider or an ODBC driver written in C#. We also have our error messages. So these are the standard error messages that are used by the SDK. And there's a couple different languages here. There's English, there's Italian, Japanese, French. And you can easily add extra locales if there's some that we haven't provided that you want. And you can just go in, and they're just XML files that you can modify. We also have the include section, and these are all the headers for the C++ libraries. So that's the ODBC layer, SQL engine, and any other libraries that you would link against when you're building a C++-based driver. We have the lib section. So this is where the Java jars are that you would use. It's also where our JDBC clients are. And it's where our native libraries are. So we have our 32 and 64-bit libraries. And we ship both dynamic and static debug and release versions of our libraries to allow you to link in any configuration. If we just go into this guy. So here's all the libraries. You can see that we have our ODBC layer, our server layer, and others. The details of these aren't really important. The samples already show you how to link everything up properly. And finally, we have a few third-party files for ICU, for internationalization, OpenSSL for SSL support and client server, and expat for our XML parsing. Also in here, we have a setup directory. So when you install the SDK, we automatically install sample DSNs. A DSN is kind of like a pre-stored connection string for connecting to an ODBC driver. So the SDK installs the 32-bit sample DSNs for all of our sample drivers. If you wanted the 64-bit ones, you could go and use this registry file to automatically import them. Or if you wanted to set these DSNs up on a separate computer without installing the SDK, you could also take this registry file and modify it. We also have registry files for setting up the ODBC Simba client on another machine. If you wanted to test remotely connecting one of the ODBC clients to a server that you've built, you could use these. We also have sample SSL certificates. So our client-server architecture supports SSL for encryption and using SSL certificates. And so we've given you some example SSL certificates so that you can easily try out configuring SSL. However, these are example certificates, and they should not be used in a production environment. They're just simply here for sample. And finally, the place you're going to spend a lot of time is with our examples. So there's, as Tom mentioned, there's 9 different sample drivers, and I'm just going to run through them all and then also touch on some of the other important things here. So as I mentioned, the SDK installs sample DSNs that automatically work, and we ship those pre-compiled so that you could work on one of these samples, and if you changed some of the code there accidentally and it was no longer working, you have these to fall back on because these are pre-compiled and they won't be overwritten. So we ship 32-bit versions of our samples. We ship 64-bit versions of the native samples. And under the wing, we have our C#.NET versions of our sample drivers. Also under the lib section, we have the Java versions of our sample drivers. One other important section before I actually get onto the samples is the databases directory. So we have 2 types of sample drivers. One that just reads text files, so XML and text. And the text is tab delimited Unicode format. And we also have the code-based driver, which reads from DBF files. So if you're using one of the drivers and you're wondering where the data is coming from, it's coming from this databases directory. All right, let's actually look at one of the examples here. I'm going to start with a C++ based ODBC driver, which does not have, or which does not use our SQL engine. It assumes that there's already SQL support in the data source. So that's the ultralight sample. So we can go in here, and this is what it's generally going to look at. We have registry files so that you can automatically set up a sample DSN on another computer if you'd wanted to. And then we have our projects and the actual source files. I've installed the Visual Studio 2012 kit on this machine to demo to you guys. We also have a 2010 kit available, as well as all the other platforms that Tom outlined in his slides. So I've already got this guy open. And if you actually open up the solution file in Visual Studio, you'll see something like this. When you're looking at these samples, if you think back to the diagram that Tom said had out there, which had your data source at the bottom and your data store interface, then the SQL engine above that, and so on. What you're looking at here is an extension of the data store interface. It's what we call the data store interface implementation, or DSII. And when you're looking at any of the samples, or you're talking about building an ODBC driver, you're actually talking about writing the DSII, which is essentially just custom bits at the very bottom of the ODBC driver stack, or JDBC driver stack, or .NET provider. It's just the custom bits which will connect to your data source to tell the SDK, how do I get all the tables from this data source, or how do I get the rows and the data from this specific table. So the way this is laid out is we kind of conceptually think of it as two sections, the core and the data engine components. So within the core, we have a driver, an environment, a connection, and a statement. And they kind of loosely mirror the structure for ODBC if you're familiar with that. You have one driver, you have one-to-many relationship to environments, one-to-many to connections, and one-to-many to statements. And whether you're looking at a driver which uses the SQL engine or does not use the SQL engine, the core section is going to be essentially the same. There's not really going to be any changes. Next, you have the data engine section. And this is where things would change if you were using a SQL engine versus not using a SQL engine. And the ultralight sample does not use the Simba SQL engine. It assumes that there's already SQL support. So if we look at this, we have the data engine class. And you can think of this as kind of a factory for creating catalog metadata. So you want a list of tables, you want a list of columns, you want the column privileges or foreign keys. So that sort of metadata, that's going to be all instantiated from here. And this is also going to be the entry point for preparing a query. So you can see we have this prepare method and we're past the SQL query. As I mentioned, the ultralight driver does not use our SQL engine. And since we didn't want to proxy to another SQL engine, we just have some really simple parsing here to kind of determine if we're doing a select statement, there's query or parameters, or just a few other simple things. But in reality, in your production level of ODBC driver, this is where you would actually send this query to your data source. So when you prepare a query, you get a query executor. And you can kind of think of this as an object representing your prepared query. And then you can go and you can execute that. And you can see that we have just added some results here. So the ultralight sample uses hard-coded data to return it. So no matter what kind of select query you issue against this sample, you're always going to get back the same set of rows, the same table. And if you issue a DML, you're just going to get a row count of 12 back no matter what you do. So it's really simple. And we have the example table here, which just has the sample data hard-coded into it, and the column metadata, and then actually fetching the data. So you would take this person table and then you would genericize it so that it would work for any table in your data source. The other important thing is that when someone actually goes to use your driver, they need to set up a DSN. And that's done through the ODBC administrator. And that calls into a few other ODBC-defined functions to allow configuration of your driver. So we've actually included an example of how to do a configuration dialog right in the ultralight sample here. So that kind of covers the quick overview of the ultralight sample. Next we have a quick start sample, which is another C++-based ODBC driver. And actually one thing, if we go back to the ultralight, so we have a number of configurations. So you can link it as static or dynamic, but you can also build this as a server. And what that means is at the end of this compilation, you'll end up with either an EXE or a DLL, which represents a server. And you would either run that exe or run it as a service or load that DLL up from another process that you have. And then you would use one of the clients that we ship to connect to that server. And there's no real changes needed to your DSII. So once you've built it, there's almost no changes needed between building a standalone ODBC driver or building a server, which our client can talk to. So if we move to the quick start one, the quick start samples, there's a few of them, they all use the text files that I was talking about earlier in the databases section. So there's no SQL support at all. They're just dumb text files. So if we look at the way this is laid out, we can see there's the core section again, which is pretty much the same as it was for the ultralight sample. We also have the data engine section, and this is where it's different from the ultralight sample. We have a data engine class again, but instead of a prepare method, we have an open table method. And all this is responsible for is taking the unique identifier for a table and then returning that table object. And so whereas the ultralight sample had a result set, the UL person table, the quick start sample has this QS table, which represents a table object that reads from a text file and returns that data. We also have another sample configuration dialog, which is a little bit more complex than the ultralight sample. And the quick start sample is generally a template you're going to use if you're building an ODBC driver and you need to have our SQL engine. So if you go look at one of the 5-day guides, if you read the Build a C++ driver in 5 days guide, it's going to use the quick start sample as its template. So the final C++-based sample is our code-based sample. And this is actually based off of the code-based database. I'm not going to open it up, but the codebase is kind of our more advanced sample. So it shows off some of the more advanced features, such as C key, and I believe it has custom data types. So this is where you're going to go if you want an example of some of the more advanced features. But you're not going to want to use it as a template, and it's a little harder to understand just because it's a little bit more complex. So that's how you build a driver using C++. Those are the samples that you would use. But what if your data source is in Java? Well, we also have a Java-based quick start driver. So if you want to build an ODBC driver using Java for your DSI, you would use this guy as your template. And it's set up a little bit differently. So see that there's Java Quick Start DSII and Java Quick Start Ginny DSI. So the Ginny DSI is our bridge between native and Java. And so there's only really one file needed that you need to change here, and all this is responsible for is loading up the jar file and the JVM. And you can pretty much just leave this as is. We've already provided a sample that should work for you. And then under Java Quick Start, this is our actual Java-based Quick Start sample. And I've already loaded that up in Eclipse. So when you load it up, you're going to see this. Underneath Simba Quick Start is our core section. It's pretty familiar. And under this, we have our quickstart.dataEngine section. So this is essentially a straight port of the C++ Quick Start-based driver, except it's implemented against a Java-based version of our DSI. And the differences between the C++ and the Java DSI are very minimal. We've done a lot of work to keep the DSIs as similar as possible, accounting for language differences, so that if you go and you implement against one DSI, you're going to be really familiar with how to implement against the other DSIs and the other languages, because they're all essentially the same. So if you have a sample if you have a data source that has a SQL engine and is in Java, then you would look at the Java Ultralight sample. So this is a port of the Ultralight sample from C++, except it's based in Java. So we have the JDBC and we have the Java Ultralight DSI. So if you open it up in Eclipse, it would actually look a little bit different. We still have our core section, and we still have our data engine section, but we have all these new ones. And I'll cover those in a second. But this is all laid out the same as the Ultralight sample is in C++, just in Java against the Java DSI. So the cool thing about this sample is that the Java Ultralight sample can also be used as a pure JDBC driver. So you can build it as either an ODBC driver, or you can build it against the Simba JDBC jar files and build a pure JDBC driver. And that's what the highlighted packages are for. So you can either build a JDBC3 driver, you can build a JDBC4 driver, or you can build a hybrid driver. And what a hybrid driver means is that if someone loads it up as JDBC3, it'll load as the JDBC3 driver, or if you load it as JDBC4, it will load as the JDBC4 driver. So that's Java, and that's native. And we also have one more section. So if your data source is C#, we have the .NET Quick Start and the .NET Ultralight sections. The .NET Quick Start is pretty self-explanatory. It's a port of the Quick Start driver, but done in C#. The only other wrinkle here is that we have the CLI DSI, and that's our native to .NET bridge, just like the JDBC was native to Java bridge. And we also have the .NET Ultralight section. This is a port of the C++ Ultralight done in C# against our C# DSI. The other cool thing about this one is, like the Java Ultralight sample could be built as a JDBC or driver, the .NET Ultralight can be built as an ADO.NET provider or an ODBC driver without any code changes. So that kind of is the quick overview of all of the samples. So I'm just going to give a quick demo in both Excel and Tableau, because those are kind of the two big ones. And I should note that I am not the expert at making things look pretty in either of these. I'm sure you guys can do a lot better. So if we open up Excel, we're just going to go to the Data tab from other data sources. And you can use the Data Connection Wizard or the Microsoft Query. I'm going to use Microsoft Query here. And we can see that we have all of our sample DSNs at the SDK installed. So I'm just going to choose the Quick Start DSI, and that's the C++-based Quick Start. Go OK. And we can see that all our tables are loaded. And all these tables were in the database section under the text directory that I showed earlier. So we'll just choose the employee table. You can see all the columns are here. Let's just put a filter in here. I don't know, greater than I can just type this in, or I can be lazy. Let's pop this down. And we'll sort by first name. There we go. We'll go next, and we'll just return this to Excel. And there we go. So data's come back, it's being filtered, and it's being ordered. And remember, this is reading just from a text file. And Excel issued a SQL query, which our SQL engine parsed and executed using our sample. So if we go to Tableau, there we go. Just took a second there. So I'm using Tableau 8. So this is the way it just opens up. So we'll go connect to data. We'll go to the very bottom. We'll just go other databases, ODBC. We'll choose the Quick Start DSI again, connect. You can either go single, multi, or custom SQL, so let's do custom SQL. And we can just preview the results here, so you can see all that data is brought back. So that worked, and we'll just pick a single table here. I'll leave the emp table again. Okay, we'll connect live. You can see all the columns are being brought up and their measures. So I'm not the Tableau expert. You guys are probably going to create something that's way more interesting than I am. So we'll just put the first name on rows. And we'll just see who's in what department. So you can see there's the most people in department D11. It looks like there's 2 checks here. So we can just drag the last name onto the rows. We can see there's actually 2 different checks. And so that kind of wraps up my section. So you can see that we've had Excel working, Tableau working, and just a quick overview of all of the sample drivers and the SDK. So I will throw it back to you, Tom.
Thanks, Kyle. That was great, and I'm sure that will really help everyone feel more comfortable, and just when they do open up the SDK, kind of get right down to it and be able to get to work in a hurry. So I really thank you for walking us through that and sharing your high level of expertise with everyone. So we're up against the 45-minute mark. So just want to let everyone know, thank you very much for attending today. I do have a couple of questions that have come in via the chat window. Thank you for those. So Kyle, if you can just hang around for a couple of minutes, maybe we can ask you maybe to answer the questions for us. So for everyone, please feel free to stay. We'll stay on as long as the questions keep coming, and please come back to solutions@simba.com. You can reach us on Twitter. You can catch us on LinkedIn. So there really are just a lot of very easy ways to connect with us. So I'm going to go through these couple of quick questions, but just before we jump into those, I just wanted to lay out very, very quickly for everyone kind of the process that we see over and over again with companies that want to use the SimbaEngine SDK. When you download the SDK, you get a 30-day eval license. Obviously, the focus today, we've been talking about building a driver in 5 days, and that's absolutely doable. But usually what happens is this. You get your SDK, download it. We know that you have other things to do and that you have a full-time job, and a lot of times building out a connector is kind of, you're doing that a little bit on the side. But the first step is to download it. So we urge you, if you haven't already done so, please come back to simba.com and just press on the SimbaEngine SDK, download it, and get that part started. We will immediately send you your 30-day eval key, and then you're off to the races. And then usually what happens is people spend a bit of time and they go through and they review the documents. This webinar that we are doing today will be posted up on our website. Should be up there by tomorrow, if not the next day. So you can always come back and see what Kyle was doing and where he was pointing to the documentation and all that. But once you unwrap the kit, you'll see that the documentation that's in there is extremely very detailed and will really help you. Then usually what happens is that you'll come up against a question. Just email me, and we'll get back to you immediately. Sometimes if a bunch of questions build up, we're happy to jump on a WebEx and kind of walk you through, see kind of what you're doing. And then within very short order, you'll have your POC up and running. You'll be able to connect to your data. It may just be a preliminary, maybe a lower performance connector that you've built, but at least you prove that you can connect your data to Excel or to Tableau, just like what Kyle did. And then usually about that point, we start to get into the commercial side of things, and there may be somebody within your company that looks after the agreement side, and we're happy to engage with them and start to share what the agreement looks like, get the pricing ironed out, and all the details. And that and then you can progress with your the building out of the driver in parallel, and then usually by the end of the 30 days we're pretty much all done. During the last sort of couple of weeks or so, really what we're doing, and we have no problem doing this, is we're really kind of teaching you and showing you how to build the driver. It goes way beyond just evaluating the SDK, and you'll find that we're extremely forthcoming with our time and just with the expertise that we have, just to make sure that you can show and you can prove and you can deliver to your organization a high-quality, high-performance driver in as quick a time as possible. So there's a lot of value there. We don't charge for the kit. We'll sign a license agreement with you and allow your organization to move forward. So that's it. So as I said, just download the kit, and then we're off to the races, and then we're connected, and we can get going together. So Kyle, I have a question here from one of our listeners today, one of the participants. We're concerned about performance. Good question, everyone is. If I'm trying to pull a row in a table, does the driver pull the entire table?
That's a good question. So when you're first going through and making your POC, such as based off the quick start, yes, the SDK, the SQL engine will pull every single row to try and every single row in the table to try and determine which row you want. But if that's not fast enough for you, and the SQL engine is being tuned, so it is fairly fast, but if that's not fast enough, you can also use collaborative query execution, which is Tom briefly mentioned and I mentioned for the code-based sample. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to actually have that filtering operation pushed down from the SQL engine into your data store. So if your data store can filter out values extremely quickly, you can allow your data store to do that filtering and just return the filtered result set to the SQL engine, so that it will only inspect the filtered results. Alternatively, if you have a complex filter where you have an AND, and you can only, or an AND or whatever you have in your where section, but you have a compound expression in your where clause, and you can only handle part of that expression, you can work in conjunction with our SQL engine, and you can hand the SQL engine back a partially filtered result set, and then our SQL engine will filter out the rest of the rows. There's also a few other things you can do with CQE, such as join optimizations and aggregate optimizations, which are demoed in the code-based sample. So if you want to find out more, you can read the documentation, or you can look at the code-based sample.
Great. Thank you very much. That was great. I've got one other one here relating to, I guess, deployment method. If I build my connector in the client-server mode, will the client work with any client?
Yeah, so the way it works is that once you've built a server, so say I build it, I don't know, on 64-bit Windows, we have 3 clients. We have our ADO.NET client, our JDBC client, and our ODBC client. So any of those 3 clients on any platform, on any business, will talk to any server. So if I have my ODBC client on HBox, 32-bit, and I'm talking to my server that I built on 64-bit Windows, that'll work. My JDBC client on whatever platform, talking to my server, that'll work. So it's any client will talk to any server across any business and any platform. So you can also think of that as kind of an advantage, because when you build a server, you're only implementing one DSI. And then that server essentially gets you all 3 interfaces for free, because you can have the ODBC client, JDBC client, or the ADO.NET client talk to that server, so you get all those 3 and have only implemented one DSI.
Fabulous. Okay, well, it was kind of a quiet group today. Those were the only 2 questions that I see came in on the chat window. Kind of like last call, I think everyone kind of going, gone. If you do not have any more questions. I think we've about overstayed our welcome, and we're coming up to pretty close to an hour. And we really hope that that this was a benefit to you, and you got some value out of the time. And as I said, please come back, visit the website, download the SDK, and engage with us. And we will absolutely guarantee that you get a driver running in as quick time as possible. And we will get you something that you'll be proud of and you can show off to your organization and help with the business problem that you're trying to solve. So yeah, thanks again for joining us. This webinar will be posted on the website, and we do look forward to hearing from you in the near future. Kyle, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to doing this